Two things.
That's what I was gonna say. Maybe doing two things is too much for Asia's internet.
Mm.
Okay.
Like, no shade.
No, none taken. None taken. So I'm not gonna share the screen because now I'm nervous about it.
It's all good. I'll go back to the
Yeah, so let me just say, y'all y'all outperformed yourselves on this quiz. Like truly,
oh,
the
wrong one.
answers that we got were so good, were so fresh. For example, we asked the question, would you drink hibiscus tea in the dead of winter? Why or why not? And most of y'all were like, no, because it makes you cold. But there were some really great caveats. So some folks were like, yes, if it has warming spices to counteract the cooling nature. Ooh, that was so
Mhm.
smart.
Mhm.
Nah, fam, it's cooling unless you're living in Texas and it's still hot as hell in the winter because we're living through a climate crisis, but typically no.
I mean, but the tea is, speaking of which, like in Jamaica and other places in the Caribbean, like sorrel is a Christmas drink.
Hmm.
So
Mhm.
they are drinking it when it's cooler. So there's that.
Yeah,
But remember, they have all the spices in it.
they sure
Mhm.
do. When I asked about lectins and phytic acids, most of you went so hard. You got it. Beans, seeds, grains, the reproductive parts of the plants. Warming spices and long cooking times, get rid of that. Um, they serve like the lectins serve the plants by working to preserve their DNA. They say, "Don't eat my babies. Let them live." Okay. And so we have to take the little jackets off, the skin. Exactly.
Little
Um,
jackets.
that's a good way to think about it too. We
Mhm.
need to eat them naked, okay? They help to protect plants from predators. Soaking them and using small amounts of animal protein can resolve the effects. Amazing. Everyone who answered these questions, all 9 of you, like y'all are all A students. What technology can we learn from indigenous Americans? Y'all got it. Nixtamalization. Name the African river goddess of honey, black-eyed peas, and collard greens. Who that is? Oh, shoot. Okay, some of y'all went hard, spelled it 4 different ways. Okay, we see you. We see you out
Period.
there. Let us know,
Yes.
okay? Put some grammatical correctness on it, okay? So you got it. And if this course had a patron deity, it would probably be Oshun, right?
Mm.
The spleen stomach. Okay. What mineral deficiencies are associated with anemia or empty blood, and how did African
Mm.
people in the Americas address it? Iron deficiency, leafy greens, hello. They added sour foods, hello, to unlock the minerals. There we go. The long cooking times with fat and protein that made the iron in the greens more available. Iron, 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 cast iron skillets, a little bit of sugar. Hello. Yes. So, yeah, y'all went really hard with these answers, and I'm like so impressed. What makes sweet potatoes orange, and why does this matter to Black folks specifically? Beta carotene, vitamin A, beta carotene, beta carotene, beta carotene, vitamin A, because are associated with red palm oil. Exactly. It's aligned with West African culinary traditions and thus good for Black folks. We needed to support our bodies as Black people because our country was so rich in it. Um, ooh, I like this one. It's assisted us in having good eyesight for escaping in the nighttime. It also
Ooh.
supported stressed reproductive systems and allowed us to combat the bitterness of life. Okay. Okay.
Y'all are smart.
Oh, and I like this one. And because people's like the red palm oil, right? It's like, yes, honey, we've been eating red palm oil for our whole thing. So we are
Mhm.
adapted to carotenoids. And also, uh, people in tropical places, what's fascinating is that if you are from tropical descent, you actually convert beta carotene into vitamin A almost to a factor of 8 times more efficiently than Europeans and people in temperate environments. So tropical people are better at being plant-based. So for y'all who are, exploring veganism, just know that you're better at it and that you're going to be better at it than your European counterparts because we know how to do the conversion. In Europe, in cold weather places, that conversion, they weren't having a lot of beta carotene. They were having the preformed form of vitamin A that comes from animals, you see. So we were eating plants, and so we had to get really good at converting it. And so we are. So that's why we're better vegetarians. Anyways, so yeah, all of you got it. A is important for us. Daughter is the yams. Yes, yes, yes. And then the bonus question is, what's the value of saturated and animal fats in the diet? And that's what gets us to this conversation that we're having today. Fat soluble vitamins. Ding, 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 ding. If you're drinking milk with vitamin fortifications in it, but no fat, you're not getting anything from the milk, right? It slows the movement of sugar in the body. Ding, 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 ding. It increases the bioavailability of certain nutrients in the grains. Exactly. It helps us to absorb nutrients better from plants and grains. It also protects us. Yes. Studies show that consuming animal fats in the context of low carb, high fat supports cardiovascular. This is this our dietitian. Supports cardiovascular health. Having lower lipoprotein is generally healthier because it's a carrier for oxidized phospholipids in our blood plasma. Boom. Fats are protective, especially when received from animals who have good lives and whose fats were healthy from a healthy lifestyle and didn't absorb toxins. That caveat is everything, y'all. It really does matter. Okay? That's such an important caveat. The quality of the life of the animal matters. Okay? Shout out to y'all. We need a balance between plant protein and animal protein. I don't think we need a balance. I think we need more plant protein than animal protein. I really do. I think this much animal, this much plant. So good thoughts, good thinking. It's an excellent source of energy. That's right. The fat brings out the nutrients when cooked, and it helps support longevity, helps stabilize plant fats in cooking. Yes. All right. All right. So y'all all got an A.
Yay.
But only half the class took the test. So
Raggedy. Raggedy. Come on, y'all.
It's fine. It really was a pop quiz. So, some people, they got triggered. The curve is still an A.
Okay. All right, y'all ready? Y'all ready for this class to start? All right, let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Before we move on, I'm wondering if we'd like to get one voice in the room of someone who made sweet potato pie last week or in the last 2 weeks. Or maybe y'all were like, I'm gonna wait to save this for Thanksgiving. But if you're in my family, you're not gonna risk a new recipe at the Thanksgiving table.
Absolutely not.
You're not gonna risk a failure.
Not on that scale.
Okay. I've been serving up my goods for 5 years. Okay. I'm way too scared to fail at Thanksgiving. So some of y'all are brave. Who made the sweet potato pie?
Nobody. I am saving mine till Thanksgiving because I looked at the recipe and it is so close to what my family has already done.
Oh, yeah.
That I'm like, I'm good.
I'm confident.
I'm good.
That vodka in the recipe, that was like,
oh yeah.
That's true. I
Yeah,
can't wait to try Justin's crust.
Yeah, this
Like,
The crust.
oof.
yeah.
Gonna
The
be
vodka makes all the difference.
Oh, you couldn't get the crust to do
What it do?
that?
I
Dang.
saw you post that. And one of the things that if I'm correct, you were using a stand mixer. Stand mixers do not work for pie crusts.
No.
You got to use the old fashioned hands.
You got to use. Yep, they do not. They will make it too tough in a second.
Yep. I learned
You
that
cannot.
the hard way.
You cannot use. You cannot use a stand mixer. They will. It's so easy to overbeat it.
Interesting.
It's
Okay.
really easy to overbeat it.
Pie crust, I will say, is one of, in my opinion, it's an advanced cooking like technique. Like
Yes.
pie is actually an advanced dessert. And I just want to acknowledge that like it's not easy to make a pie crust. Like it is, you got to keep the butter cold at the same time. Like it's just not, it's not an easy thing to do. But Dom said that filling though, the filling was
Just-
everything. Hot hands are the enemy of pie crust. Yeah.
Yeah.
They,
Everything needs to be cold. The bowl, the butter, the flour. I put everything in the freezer before I start. Everything, all the utensils, the vodka, everything is in the freezer.
and I don't cook it in a hot kitchen. I do it in the dining room where it's cooler.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, but think about this. This dish, let's use our like geographical ethnic thing. These dishes come from much colder places, right? So trying to make pie in Puerto Rico is going to be a lot harder than it is to make it in, Germany, right? Because it is generally colder, right? It's easier to keep these things room temperature in Germany. It's not the same thing as room temperature in North Carolina, for instance.
That's true.
Right?
Word. All right. So let's get into the ethnobotany of
Let's get it.
fried chicken, y'all. Fried chicken.
Okay, so this is less ethnobotany because of chicken, but let's still go to the origins.
Okay, but chickens, they eat all the things.
They eat stuff. They eat plants. Okay, let's go. So let's talk about chicken in general. Okay. Gallus, which is the species that is our domestic chicken, is domesticated in Southeast Asia, something like maybe up to 7,000 years ago. Okay. And so at the beginning, I want to make this point important. At the beginning, the bird was not raised for meat. It was raised for medicine. This is a medicine bird. Okay. It has been used for ritual. It's been raised for its feathers. It's been raised to fight. And the meat was basically the last thing on those lists. Okay. It is a medicine bird. There's a reason why people prescribe chicken soup. Is because originally this was bred for its medicinal properties. Okay. So then it spread through trade to all of Africa. One of the most fascinating things I find about learning about the domestication of things in the world is that people think that European trade introduced so many things to Africa. That is not true. Africa is contiguous with Asia, right? You can walk from Africa to the Middle East, right? You could literally walk. Nope. You can literally walk. Whoop, sorry. Can y'all still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. The call was coming in. So lots of things were traded back and forth from out of Africa into other places. Of course, we know that, but also into Africa. And the chicken, Gallus, is one of those things, but it has been in West Africa for a very long time. So much so that it has become a part of the Yoruba creation story. And so in the Yoruba creation story, now I don't even know if they meant originally the guinea fowl or whatever, but the guinea fowl or the hen, the five-toed hen, is important in making the valleys and the mountains of the earth, right, of Yoruba land. So when Olodumare sent Obatala down to earth to get the earth ready for human beings, sent Obatala down with the snail shell, and in that snail shell was a little bit of sand, and with him he took the hen, and with the hen came down and scattered the sand. right? And also the palm came at that same time. The palm kernels came at that same time, and then the chameleon came to test the ground to make sure that it was stable for human beings. So the chicken or the hen plays a big important role even in Yoruba cosmology creation story. So it's been around West Africa for a very, very long time. Okay, next slide. And so you're gonna hear people argue about the origin of fried chicken from yesterday till today, from the resurrection to the revolution. So let me tell you this: fried chicken is a worldwide dish. Anywhere that there is chicken or fowl and there is oil, people have figured out how to fry it. Okay, it is everywhere. There's some version of it everywhere. Nobody can lay claim to fried chicken, right? And if anywhere, it would be China, probably, right? If there had to be anywhere, we had to think about it. Okay. So what we want to focus on, and what we will focus on, is where, right? Because food history and cooking is specific. It's not general. It is the opposite of general. It is super specific, hyper specific. And so as we talk about the kind of fried chicken that we're talking about today, and as we explore its origins a little bit, we want to get hyper specific, not general. Okay. So y'all got that. We're going for specificness. Remember, everybody got fried chicken, right? What's the vodka for in the pie crust? The vodka will evaporate when you're cooking, right? And will leave these beautiful air pockets. So you have this flaky, perfect crust, but it gives you the moistness that you need to work the dough. And it won't leave any vodka taste in. That's why we use vodka, so it doesn't leave any lingering taste. Okay, next slide. Okay, now why are we looking at this map? Okay, you can see what part, if you know your geography, why in the world are we looking at this particular map? You see Italy, you see Germany, you see Austria, Switzerland. Why would we be looking at here for a map of our fried chicken? Okay, here we go. Here we go into the deep specifics. So let's iron out how we make Southern fried chicken in the South. Okay, I'm gonna go with our most basic recipe. Okay, my most basic recipe, now every piece I'm going to say is important. Our most basic recipe is to take raw bone-in chicken, put it in a seasoned flour dredge, take that seasoned flour dredge, you roll the chicken in it, and then fry that chicken in animal fat until it is done. That is the most basic recipe. Does everybody agree? Shake your head if that's the most basic recipe. You can do lots of other things to it. You can add an egg. You can add egg and roll, and put it in the flour dredge again. You can add more spices, whatever, any of those things. But that's the most basic recipe. Okay, now let's compare that to a German dish called Hähnchenschnitzel. Okay, Hähnchenschnitzel. Okay, so you take raw chicken, but this chicken is boneless. Pound the chicken until it's flat. Take that pounded flat chicken, put it in seasoned flour, then dip it in egg, then dip it in breadcrumbs and fry it in animal fat until it's done. Okay, so we have a German Austrian version, we have a Southern American version, and now let's compare this to the Nigerian version of fried chicken. In the Nigerian version of fried chicken, you take bone-in chicken and you season it. Right? That's called a cutlet. Yep. You take bone-in chicken and then you season it. And then you steam that chicken or braise it or whatever, however you want to say it, until the chicken is done. Chicken is cooked, fully cooked. Then you take that chicken, you fry it in palm oil, right? For a very, very short time, maybe 2 minutes. And then you can eat it that way, or you usually put that chicken back into a stew. Okay. Now, of the three ways, which of the two ways are closest to each other?
You
Of
and
the
these
three,
Germans. I guess the Southern America and the German.
has anybody ever had Amish fried chicken? It tastes like our fried chicken. Who are the Amish? German Anabaptists. You have to ask yourself, what's the connection? Okay.
No.
You got to ask yourself what the connection is. Now, never fear. Never fear. There is West Africans eat fried chicken too, right? West Africans eat fried chicken too. And you can find these versions of West African fried chicken in the United States too. You just got to know where to look, right? You just got to know where to look. Have anybody had Nashville hot chicken? That is fried and then dumped into a sauce. What is that reminiscent of? The Nigerian way.
Okay.
Right? There's a restaurant in this place called Cleveland, North Carolina. That's exactly how they cook their chicken too. Fry it, right? And it's not even breaded. And then you dunk it into a sauce. Okay. So let me go one step further. Let's call this technique that I just told you about schnitzeling, for lack of a better word, right? The technique of schnitzeling. Okay. So let's remember that process that we used, right? See, a raw thing, right? A raw piece of meat, or it could be a raw anything. Seasoned flour, maybe breadcrumbs, maybe not breadcrumbs, and frying that in animal fat until it's done. Remember, it needs to be raw. Okay? So let's take that. If we do that with a veal cutlet, we have Wiener Schnitzel. If we do that with a chicken cutlet, we have Hahnchen Schnitzel. If we do that with a bone-in pork chop, we got pork chops. If we do that with cube steak, we got chicken fried steak. If we do that with okra, we have fried okra. If we do that with onion rings, if we do that with onions, you got onion rings. If you do that with tomatoes, you got fried green tomatoes, right? This is an extreme. If you do that with potatoes, you have chicken fried potatoes, or we used to call them taters, right? You see the point, right? It is an extremely productive way of cooking, right? You have the same, and if you go into the Spanish route, that style of cooking is called milanesa, right? Right? Milanesa. If you go into a Mexican restaurant, you see milanesa. That is because the style is associated with Milan, right? And Milan is in where? The German part of Italy, conquered by the Lombards, who are a Germanic tribe, right? Okay, so and that style of cooking has been attested since the year 1062, right? Of the breading and the frying, right? So this also makes some sense if we think about it, comparing it to West African food, is that one of the main ingredients is flour, right? You need to cook this in a flour. Now, here's the thing. I actually think this has a much further, longer history that is probably coming from the Middle East or even India. Think about how Southeast Asian people cook their fritters. This is chickpea flour or other kinds of flours. You see what I'm saying? Right? I suspect that it's even older than there, right? Because most of Europe's cooking techniques are coming from the Middle East and further east, strangely enough, right? So it's even older. Do not despair. Okay. Do not despair. But that technique, let's call that schnitzeling, and that is very much a Germanic type. What is funnel cakes come from Germany, donuts come from Germany, all that stuff comes from Germany, right? So this idea that African people love deep frying stuff, that's not true. Right? That's not true. This is a European way of cooking, right? It's them who invent the donut and the funnel cake. Those are European foods. Okay, so, but what is the point of fried chicken, right? Fried chicken is a way to preserve chicken. Okay, if you make fried chicken and you fry it, one of the most important things is to dry it completely out, right? Is to dry it completely out so that it can be stable without being refrigerated. And that's incredibly important in a southern climate, right? It's incredibly important. And I'll say this, my mother, who grew up with tenant farming and with landowning family too. But she said that they only ate fried chicken once a week at the very most, or every other week. Right? So this is a celebration food. This is a food of joy. This is a food of celebration. This is a food for eating when we couldn't eat, for when our ancestors could not have this food. It is a food of celebration, right? I love fried chicken. I think it's great. Right? A food for traveling, right? And if you want to read more specifically about the history of fried chicken, there's a great book written by Sfg Williams called Houses Built Out of Chicken Legs. It's an incredible book. I suggest everybody read it if you're interested in specifically Black women's entrepreneurship connected to fried chicken. Right? I really suggest y'all read that book. It's a great read. It helps talk about how really Black women, more specifically, have had used fried chicken as this way to be able to gain money for themselves and to really put back in this African sense of market women in the marketplace selling goods, right? The title, I put the title in the chat as soon as I stop talking. So that was a lot. I want you to think about it. And fried chicken is great. That's not to shame it. That's not to shame us. That's not to do anything. But I do think it's important to know the origins of our food. Houses built of chicken. Houses built of chicken. Okay. And let's see, what's our time? 8:12. So there's a lot of questions about that. I mean, Ada, do you mind if we deviate slightly? I want to get people's feedback. God, now that was a lot to throw in people's lap.
Lord have mercy.
Does anybody have feedback?
I'm just dead at the comments that said, first you came for our greens, now you damn.
Lord have mercy. Have mercy.
We were not ready for this.
Nope.
So did all these types of fried chicken evolve separately, or were they influenced by trade? Some were influenced by trade, some seem to have just happened naturally because there was chickens and people.
Yes, a lot of this is a lot of this is trade. So if you enjoyed Korean fried chicken, that's a really funny one. Because Korean fried chicken was taught to Koreans by Black GIs.
Oh wow.
Right? Yeah. That's the history of this is very strange history. And and then now we learn this other piece of it. Okay, this style of fried chicken is given to us by that part of Europe. Right? Now it makes the chain sort of more complex. Right? Let me give you another example. So anybody ever thought about why tempura is a part of Japanese cuisine? Or katsu, right? Those chicken cutlets. You want to know why? The Portuguese introduced that style to them. Oh, wow. This idea of breading and frying is coming from Europe. Right? That is why those things don't fit with the rest of Japanese cuisine. That is because the Portuguese took that there.
Wait, what about mayo?
About what? Mayo. Like mayonnaise?
Mm-hmm. Because they put mayo on everything.
Mayo came from World War.
Yeah. Came from where?
It came from the influence of America, along with anime, came from American comics. There was a lot of
interesting
cultural influence, including mayonnaise, right? Mayonnaise.
So strange.
No, here's the thing. Here's the thing. If you're using soybean oil in your mayo, no, it's gross. It's gross. And every time there's mayonnaise on Asian food, it's colonization, and it makes me sad, and I don't want anything with mayo on it. But just like the Asians, or just like Black folks, like Asians innovated. Like Korean fried chicken is its own thing. Like, right? Like every anime is not the same as the other cartoons that came. It's like, so the innovation is there as well. I'm not mad at it, but
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yep.
Mayo is hella colonization, and we'll talk about those other soul food dishes in semester 2.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. Right. But just to say that, like, it is not just the United States or just African people in the United States who got this sort of fried chicken parcel, right? It made it all the way to Japan. Right? Them too.
Yes. Well, let's talk about frying food.
Okay, let's get it. Let's get it.
Mad adjusted.
I know, I'm tired.
Tired.
Traumatized.
Oh, all right, next slide. So we're gonna go into some of these added things, but what I want you to pay attention to are the spices, as well as the saturated fat. Next slide. So meat is medicine. Every single thing, if you are sophisticated enough, you'll learn what the medicinal qualities are, especially if you got to have a culture that was not disrupted by colonization. And so on this little chart here, we have our meat and some of the most important words that we should look for when we're selecting our meat. So we want to make sure that we're getting wild caught and not farmed fish, right? We want to make sure that we're getting free range and pasture raised chicken. We want pastured lamb, pastured pork, and pastured cow. And in terms of fried chicken and chicken in general, one of my first apprenticeships with Kay Baxter in New Zealand at the Koanga Institute is that she put me in charge of the chicken. And one of the issues that I had was that I was deathly allergic to this terrible tabby kitty named Buddy. This cat stalked me, attacked my ankles, jumped on my head in the dark. This was a demonic cat, and I was terribly allergic. So I was staying here on this farm and couldn't take antihistamines because we were like far away from grocery, and I had to figure out how to deal with my cat allergy with the things that were available. One of the most important sort of anti-allergy compounds that I found were omega-3 fatty acids. And I wasn't willing to import fish oil or cod liver oil, so I had to figure out how to create it. And so what I would do every single day is I would go outside and I would harvest fresh green weeds to feed to the chickens. And after about a week or so, the eggs that those chickens laid were almost red. They were beyond orange. They had so much carotenoids from those greens because the chicken was a vehicle of transforming the inedible leafy greens into edible preformed vitamin A, right, in the eggs. And those eggs had more omega-3 fatty acids, right, than omega-6 fatty acids. And we'll talk a little bit more about that today. So one of the ways that we can think about food as medicine is that whatever the animal eats, we can optimize sort of their nutrition so that the byproducts of the animals are perfectly bioavailable for us and our bodies. After 2 weeks of eating those chicken eggs, I was no longer reacting to Buddy. And not only that, that combined with stinging nettle had it so that I wasn't allergic to cats for 6 to 7 years after that experience, right? Using the chicken as a vehicle of transformation. So chicken, its medicinal qualities is it helps us to circulate blood, it keeps us warm, and the marrow and the bones. How many of y'all had that auntie and just like chew on the bones?
I'm the auntie.
I'm the auntie. And if you go to a Chinese restaurant, then you'll notice when you get chicken that the bone is cut in half, right? When I was in Ghana, I saw the same thing happening with Black people chewing on the bone. The reason why is that the bone marrow itself, all of our blood is produced from our bone marrow. The bone marrow is also what produces our fat. The bone marrow is healing to the kidneys, right? It restores our jing, our life force energy that was passed down to us by our parents, right? So that bone marrow and chewing on the bones, but also cooking meat with the bone, right, is one of the best way we get to Shantae. How you doing?
I'm good. I just have a little funny story. So my daughter, when she was a baby, her name is Mona Set. And so we used to call her nickname was Chicken Bone Moan, because when she was teething, we would give her a chicken bone. We pulled the meat off, give her the chicken bone, and she'd rub against her gums. And if you try to take it away, she would just try to fight you over that chicken bone. So yeah, I was just chimed in to share that. Like, people are serious about those bones.
People are serious about those bones, and the best cooks know that always, always, always choose the meat with the bone. Because the meat with the bone has more collagen infused in the meat and it gives it better flavor. But also the bone has the bone marrow. So if you crack that bone and you eat that marrow, you increase the nutrition you get from that meal significantly. Okay. Okay, next slide. Oh, and we'll talk about fatty acids on the next slide, and you'll see why that matters. So one of the things about fried chicken and one of the key pattern languages that we have, even if it's from Germany, is cooking the animal in animal fat. So there are 3 broad categories of fats, and it has to do with all fats are going to be carbon chains with hydrogens, right? And depending on how many hydrogens are missing, that changes the form and the structure of the fat. So a saturated fat is a carbon chain that's fully that has all of its hydrogens. Okay, therefore it's fully saturated, right, with those hydrogens. What that saturation does is that when these fats are at room temperature, since they're stable, they're able to stack on top of each other, creating solidity, right? Saturated fats are solid at room temperature. Those fats, we find them in coconut oil, palm oil, and all of the animal fats mostly are saturated. The next fat we have is monounsaturated fatty acids. And what that means is there is one single point of non-saturation, okay? And it causes that chain to have a little kink. And that kink means that it doesn't stack up well and that it's liquid at room temperature. So our monounsaturated fatty acids, these are all of our fruit acids. All right, this is going to be our avocado oil, right? This is going to be our olive oil, right? And these are going to be less stable than the saturated fat, but more stable than the polyunsaturated fat. So the polyunsaturated fat has multiple points of instability. There are many hydrogens that are missing, okay? These are the most unstable fats. These are the fats that are coming from nuts and seeds and grain. Okay. Alexis.
Hi, yes. Could you repeat
Yes. Oil, Nicole.
the difference between the chains, like the difference between the kind of what you said at the beginning about carbon, and then also what is the monounsaturated fatty acid?
Absolutely.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, so as you can see, these are all carbon chains, right? With some oxygens. But what makes it a saturated fat is that all the carbon chains have a hydrogen attached to them, making them not only stable, right? But they're going to be stable at room temperature. The monounsaturated fatty acid has one hydrogen missing, and that causes that carbon chain to have a kink, and that's why it's liquid at room temperature. Okay? Polyunsaturated fat has poly, which means multiple, mono, which means one. Okay? So poly has multiple unsaturated fatty acids, right? Making it the least stable. And so stability in cooking oils is everything. Yes, the oils associated with each. So saturated fat is animal and tropical fats, right? Monounsaturated fats are fruit fats, right? So that's going to be olive oil, that's going to be avocado oil, right? And then polyunsaturated fatty acids are going to be corn oil, canola oil, vegetable oil, anything from grains, nuts, and seeds. This last category is peligroso. It's dangerous, right? Because it's already unstable, it also becomes destroyed at high heat temperatures. No matter what they tell you on the label, they're going to say, oh, this is high heat cook. No, it's not. We do not cook at high heat with something that's already unstable because it is going to oxidize. These foods are listed in order of the rate that they become rancid. So the more unsaturated the fatty acids, the faster it spoils and becomes rancid. And rancidity is oxidization, right? So monounsaturated fatty acids, right, are not going to be as stable as our saturated fat, but they're going to be more stable than the polyfats. I do not cook in polyfats whatsoever. If I'm using something special like sesame seed oil, then I drizzle it on top, right? But I never heat polyunsaturated oils, and there are no polyunsaturated oils in my house except sesame oil, right? I don't cook with it. It's no good and it goes rancid. Monofats, these are great. If you live in a place where they produce olive oil, you might cook in it because that's what you have. But it's important to remember that even in places that are rich in olives like Italy, they're still mixing that olive oil often with pig fat, right? They're still cooking with saturated fats. In the West, we still want to, yeah, so peanut oil is going to be well, it's a legume and it's polyunsaturated, but I will have to check to see exactly what it is. It's important to know that all of these fats are mixed, right? They're different combinations. So remember, lard is a mix of saturated and monounsaturated fat. So it's not perfect relationships. And then saturated fat, one of the reasons why pork, fat back, bacon, all these things that we've talked about is because saturated fat is the least likely to go rancid. Okay, it's the most stable oil, right? And this is why,
Again.
yeah, this is why grandma kept it in the can, because you can cook more times with it without it hurting your body. And what's important is that most of our foods were cooked in saturated fat. So previously, McDonald's, Burger King, all of these fast food companies, they used to fry their French fries in tallow, which is beef fat. Yes. Yes, beef, right? So it's been the switch, right? And we can talk about the geopolitics of what happened in America was basically tropical oils, coconut and palm, were beginning to predominate in the market. And part of limiting our access to those oils was creating this anti-saturated fat campaign, right? Which demonized all saturated fats, but especially tropical fats, because the American seed oil companies wanted to monopolize the market. So rapeseed oil, for example, canola oil is from Canada. And so what they did instead to make sure that they had access to the American market and excluded, right, the blacks and browns who were producing the tropical oils was instead they took their disgusting polyunsaturated canola oil and then they forcibly hydrogenated it. And they created what we call trans fats. All right. And so Crisco, that shit, ugh, trans fats are literally the worst, because what happens is while they are chemically and physically forced to be saturated, when they get into the body, they unfold again. And so the vast majority of the researchers and the research on saturated fat and linking it to heart disease and all of these things were not done with actual animal fats. They were done with partially hydrogenated fats. Okay? So what happened to our communities was, because we were used to frying things in lard, they started replacing the lard, which is healthy, right, with trans fats, which destroy the body, right? Yeah, they named rapeseed canola oil because who wants to use a rapeseed, okay? So it's important to understand that the landscape and the quality of soul food has changed because our saturated fat has slowly been replaced with trans fats, which are actually responsible for the deterioration of our veins and arteries. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, the other thing, when you fry things in polyfats, they produce actual toxins called aldehydes, and you can taste it. So when you taste French fries and you taste that chemically, you taste that like, that's aldehydes. So we do not fry, I don't care what's on the label. Polyfats are unstable and they should even be stored in the refrigerator, right? All of my polyfats are in the fridge because they're unstable, they get rancid, and then they create poison, literally, and you can taste it. You can taste it. Okay, next slide. So the next thing I want to talk about with frying in general is that I'm not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of fried food, and that's fine. I mind my business. Fried food is for festival, right? And in general, fried food and these heavily heat processed foods, though they taste really, really good, they produce what's called advanced glycation end products, AGEs. Just think about it as AGEs. And what do AGEs do? They age you, okay? AGEs age you. So when the vegans are like, y'all eating that meat, y'all getting all crusty, they're right. Listen to your vegan friends. So what's fascinating is there's a food pattern, there's a pattern language that I want you to really understand, which is there is a cost to eating fast meat. Meat that is cooked at a high temperature, right? Meat that is cooked dry and high is going to create these advanced glycation end products that actually age us prematurely. Okay. And so these ages are everywhere. Anywhere where meat is cooked at too high of a temperature, it's aged. So in my worldview, I want my animal products as raw as possible, and I want my vegetables well done. Right? The less cooking we do of our animal products, the healthier they are for us. Advanced glycation end products are really, really important, and they're one of the things that causes meat to age us. So yeah, so we want low and slow. What's the impact of the body on ages? Well, they oxidize us. They cause inflammation. Inflammation. Yes, so we have questions. Karina.
Okay. So you mentioned dry meat.
That's right.
So I was thinking about the ingredients in fried chicken, but in particular black fried chicken that's either marinated with things and
Yeah.
or in buttermilk.
That's
Is
right.
that a technology that our ancestors used? I'm just saying.
Let's go to the next slide. Let's go to
Oh, sorry.
about it. No, it's great. All right. Anti-aging. So, and I, of course, y'all will have some reading, some articles on advanced glycation end products, but what's important to understand is that they cause inflammation and often chronic inflammation throughout the body. There are lots of processes that are associated with inflammation, and one of the most powerful things for us to understand is that when there is inflammation in our veins and arteries, our body, it can cause the cell walls, or it causes the cell walls to become more brittle. And in order to heal those brittle cell walls, our body uses cholesterol. Cholesterol is the patch, it's the glue that our body will apply to veins and arteries and arterial tissues that have become rigid and disrupted, right? And so when people say that saturated fat causes high cholesterol and that high cholesterol leads to death or whatever, the actual truth is that the cholesterol is the firefighter that's sent to the source of the fire to try to put it out, right? It's not the cholesterol in the food, right, that's leading to quote unquote clogged arteries. The arteries are clogging because of the inflammation that's taking away their mobility and their flexibility, right? Water is life. So there are some cultural tools and techniques that people have incorporated to decrease the advanced glycation in products or the aging. The first one is the power of sour, baby. If you study with me, you will learn all the power of sour things. And this is another one to add to your repertoire. Marinades are amazing. Marinades can decrease the occurrence of advanced glycation in products. And so by simply marinating, and I put brining in buttermilk, but it's not brining, it's marinating. But marinades can actually decrease the formation of these advanced glycation end products. Okay. And this is why buttermilk fried chicken, as Karina was hinting to, is actually going to be a really powerful way that our ancestors have learned how to work with the meat. Holy water. So high and dry is going to cause advanced glycation in products. But guess what? Advanced glycation in products don't form when you're making a soup. It's not the meat, baby. It's the heat, baby. Right? So when we are cooking in water, when we are using wet heat, right, it's not forming those inflammatory compounds. And doesn't that make sense? Doesn't that make sense? Okay? We need to take our time. All of the processes that don't cause inflammation are the slow processes. It takes time to marinate. It takes time to cook it low and slow, right? And also, spices like thyme are also active against advanced glycation in products. So many of the spices that we use are rich in polyphenolic compounds, What's our polyphenol rich drink that we already talked about earlier? That's right, Elsie, you get it. Hibiscus, our red drink, is full of polyphenols. That's right, Bishop, Nicole. So polyphenol-rich compounds are also active against advanced glycation end products. So we season our meat like our lives depend on it because our lives depend on seasoning our meat, right? Seasoning the meat, especially with garlic and onion powder, which are really full of organic sulfur compounds, polyphenol-rich herbs like thyme, parsley, rosemary. All of these things help the prevention of advanced glycation end products. Okay? So in order to slow our food down, right? There's a lesson about slowing our lives down, right? There's a lesson of literally being pressed for time leads us closer to death, especially when it comes to our cuisine. And I want to go back to Justin's description of how Nigerians cook their soup, right? To show you that out of all the people we surveyed, all of them were raggedy except the Africans. Why? They literally steamed the chicken, fried it for the least amount of time as possible, and then they put it back in a soup. They literally, everything about the Nigerian process was protective against advanced glycation end products. Soup is the center of the West African plate, right? All of these European cultures and all the stuff they eat, all the vegetables, everything's all separated. You know, you think it's like hot cuisine, they drizzle a sauce on it, whatever. No, honey, a soup is the key to longevity, right? Soups, cooking foods and liquids, and then drinking the liquids, right? This is the core of many of our soul food traditions, and it's also going to be the core to our health, right? Chicken soup, right? We call it the Jewish penicillin for a reason, okay? Chicken soup with its resident bone broth, okay, is one of the most immune boosting things in the world, especially because it's rich in that bone marrow, that collagen. We got the healthy, easy to digest proteins, and you could put mad vegetables in it, and they're soft and easy to digest for old people, for young people, for birthing people, right? Soup is a perfect dish. And so when it comes to like fried chicken, right? When it comes to your pork chop, when it comes to your barbecue, you're allowed to have it because it brings you joy. But what's the special thing about barbecue sauce? It's sour, baby. Right? And the best barbecuers always put that marinade on first. They put the marinade on the vegetables too, right? And so we already have sort of lessons in our culinary tradition that can teach us how to combat the negative things that come from eating meat. But the most important part is remembering to go slow and to take your time. Okay? And all right, so we're gonna pause a little bit. There were I told you won't like my PowerPoints. This is why I don't like them. People's like, I don't understand.
Who said they didn't like them? Who? Raise your hand. Stand tall.
Not Karina about to get
Like my best friends.
Period.
Technical information slows down the storytelling. It really does.
Asia.
But yes.
Don't do yourself like that.
So
the people love and appreciate all the work that you do for us.
Oh, thanks. Okay, so that was a lot. We talked about the different kinds of fats. We didn't go into omega-3 versus omega-6 fatty acids. Know that omega-3s come from grass and the sea, and omega-6s come from grains. and legumes and different things like that. Omega-3 fatty acids are anti-inflammatory. Omega-6 fatty acids are pro-inflammatory. Omega-3 fatty acids causes the blood to flow like a fish in the ocean. Omega-6 fatty acids causes the blood to clot. We need both, but typically we have them in a 1-to-1 ratio, right? We don't want our blood not clotting, so then we're going to bleed out on the table. Native Alaskans, for example, when they go into surgery, they often don't come out alive because their blood has so much omega-3 from eating the whale blubber, from eating the seals, and from eating all that fish, right? So their blood doesn't clot. So we want a 1-to-1 ratio, and grass-fed animals have a 1-to-1 ratio. Factory-fed animals sometimes have a 1-to-16 ratio. There is a difference between an animal raised on grass and an animal raised in the factory, right? It's very important. Grass-fed eggs, 1-to-1 ratio. Conventional eggs, like 1-to-12, right? It's not the same egg. All right. And a really great way for us to get our omega-3 fatty acids are not from a fish oil. Okay. Okay. Think about so omega-3 fatty acids are the most fragile of all the oils. Okay. They're so fragile and delicate. Omega-6 are like kind of hardy, right? To create a fish oil, you gotta heat that omega-3 at a high heat. It's just whack. Don't do fish oils. Small fatty fish, smash fish, salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, herring. There we go. Small fatty fish are the best way to get your omega-3 fatty acids. Oysters, all the seafood. Tuna is tricky because it's a predator fish and it accumulates mercury. So we're going to actually stick with the small fatty fish, not the big ones. Okay. You know, salmon's tricky because they're GMOing the salmon now. But salmon's good as a choice. And as you can see in a lot of West African cuisine, there's so much mackerel, there's so much dried fish, there's always fish in it. And so those small fatty fishes are going to be the best sources of omega-3 fatty acids for Black people. So even if folks are eating conventionally, if they're eating their canned fish, wild caught, if they're eating their canned fish, then that's something that's going to help them to balance those fatty acids in their diet. Some people are like, oh, what about flax and chia? Those have omega-3 fatty acids too. And it's true, they do, but not the same ones, not the same ones that create the EPA and the DHA, which we need for good brain health. Okay, so there's not a substitute for fish. So whoever's a fish eater, great job. Okay, so that was some things, and I'm curious if you're curious about anything or if that made sense to you.
AJ, I'm just going to add to something that you said to sort of broaden the picture just a little bit.
Okay.
In my early studies of Southern food, soul food, and looking at all the different roots, right? The European root, the West African root, the indigenous root, indigenous to Turtle Island root. What I realized that there was a common factor in American food in general, including in soul food, is that all of those cuisines that is picking from to make our modern day cuisine is choosing the fastest way to cook all of those things. Right? It's choosing the fastest way to cook all of those things, right? Each one of those cuisines have these low, slow, multi-day processes for food, and we don't have any of those, right? The Germans have their sauerbraten, which is marinated, which is in vinegar for days and days and days, right? the process of nixtamalizing lost mostly in modern day soul food, right? All the African, West African recipes that take forever to cook. What we have is this subset of food, right? This subset of food that is incredibly quick to make, because this has always been a capitalist country and people did not have time to sit down and eat. You need to get back on the clock, whether that clock is the cotton plantation, or whether that clock is at a shirtwaist factory, or if that's on a line at Henry Ford's plant. You don't have time to spend a lot of time cooking these, what would be considered elaborate meals from an American standpoint. So
Yeah, Alexis, the plantation Osine influences African cuisine, and it causes us to have a body of foods that are fast. But fast foods hurt the body. In every way to think about that. Fast foods, they hurt us. Eating quickly hurts us, right? Drive-in is the worst. It's literally the epitome of people eating in their car. They're not even paying attention to the food, right? Fast foods hurt the body. Alexis.
Hey y'all. Thank
Hey.
you for all this amazing information. I have a few things. Okay, I have a question, which is does frying other things like potato, like starches, like foods, does that also create AGEs as it does with meat? And then the other thing is a brief experience that I had driving in the gas station, and they had two different types of Doritos, and I didn't realize one was from Mexico, and the ingredients were completely different from the American Doritos and the Mexican Doritos, which the first ingredient was nixtamalized corn in the Mexican Doritos. It was like nixtamalized corn, cheese, oil, salt, garlic, whatever. And then the US one was like corn, canola oil, yellow number 5, like all this stuff. And it was just like crazy to see, just like in the same store, just because they happen to import from Mexico, like how we are getting such worse quality food items on every level. Even fast food, and like chips are healthier in other places.
I just have a comment to say about that. Mexico also has very raggedy food. However, they're required to label the raggediness. So Doritos, the Doritos company or whoever owns Doritos,
Frito-Lay.
didn't want to Frito-Lay. They didn't want to have to put that sign on their bag that says there are toxic ingredients in here. So they utilize better ingredients so that people would still buy the things. It's not healthier, but I mean, well, the corn is nixtamalized, but Mexico is pretty firm on that. But it's not better for you, but they just didn't want to have to put the little seal on that.
So yeah, so advanced glycation. Thank you for that, Karina. And thank you for that sharing, Alexis. Like, they feed us like dogs here because we had slavery. And so everything is shaped towards the hatred of the Black body. And therefore, everyone gets the blowback, right? Everyone gets the blowback. This is why there's no red number 5 in Italy. This is why all throughout Europe, every single American brand thing that we have here is different there. So it's not that they can't afford to put quality ingredients in it. It's that we have allowed them to control our food system. Right? Alexis, advanced glycation end products are a mixture of protein and carbohydrate. So it's specific to foods that have protein and carbs. I do not know if eating a fried potato is going to have a negative impact. We do know that potatoes that are fried are going to be higher on the glycemic index, so it's going to hurt our blood sugar versus like a boiled potato, right? Which is going to, especially if it's boiled and then cooled, ooh, right? Like potato salad, right? Best way to eat it. So no, it's not going to have advanced glycation in products unless it has protein and carbohydrates. It's that particular combination. Fried chicken is the perfect example, okay? So proteins are the things that create the advanced glycation in products. Great question. And then someone else wrote, Nicole wrote, so some oils to explore would be palm, pork fat, tallow. Schmaltz is what Jewish folks call chicken fat. All of the animal fat, as long as they're coming from healthy animals. But most importantly, there is the one of the oils we have in our house is palm oil. And it's decolored palm oil, but that's one of the things that my cousin fries her fried chicken in. So it's a mix of palm and coconut. And so I'm like, yeah. So if you're not trying to get healthy animal fat, which is very, very expensive, sometimes lard will cost me like the high-end lard from the pigs with the purple meat, okay? The highest quality. Sometimes that'd be like $15 a pound. This is why I don't fry food, because the animal fat costs so much money. I said, okay, we better put that in a pie. Look, it has to be part of the meal. It's high quality animal fat is very expensive, and that's why I don't fry a lot of food in my house. Does that make sense? Because I can't afford to. It's too expensive. What else do we have? Okay. Oh, you may not have purchased 2 gallons. Yo, the red palm oil in this household, though, is litty in the city, especially buying it direct from Ghana. Then you form trade linkages that support, listen, because we don't want red palm oil from Thailand. They're doing some raggedy stuff out there. I do have some palm oil connects. So yeah, Karina, what's up?
Sorry, I just wanted to remind you in particular that we are running out of time and folks might need to leave. So
that's right. And our class is over at 7, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. So with that, y'all, yeah, we're gonna give you some time to reflect. Maybe we'll reflect in the full group until 7 o'clock. But I want to touch in on this conversation about the fat that we eat and the conceptions of fat in the Black body before we leave. It's a topic that's really important to discuss when it comes to soul food because it impacts the way that we move through the world. And I was curious if anyone had anything that they wanted to share about that in the last 3 minutes. Nicole, give us a few thoughts.
My head is swirling. My head is swirling. It is swirling. But I did see the really helpful link to the book in your last newsletter about like how the Black body has been historically used to like determine what is not correct and what is, wrong, what is clinically wrong. And, that's been a lot to kind of contend with because I don't know, everybody else maybe didn't have an experience like this, but I didn't have anybody interceding growing up to say, we know this is the image of what is considered perfect and great, but you're not going to meet that and you don't have to meet that. And it doesn't mean you don't access health or wellness because of that. So I'm just sitting with like the connection between our foods ancestrally, how they've evolved due to things like capitalism and not being able to like pause to eat and enjoy, and injection of all these additives, with like still knowing that the foods in their ancestral ways are like full and complete and nutritious and wonderful, but that, you know, in some ways we may have moved away from some of that, and that might have an impact on how we feel in our bodies and maybe how we look on our bodies, but that's not the indicator of wellness. How we look is not the real deal. So again, the swirl, my brain is swimming, and somebody else probably has more coherent thoughts to share than me.
That sounded very coherent. And what we want to do though is what we want to say, of course, we're going to have After Dark, Soul Food Genius After Dark coming up. But we want to say thank you to all of you who need to bow out now and take care of the kids and the babies. And you know, whatever you need to do, but we're going to stay on for an extra 30 minutes to continue our discussion. But we wanted to say thank you to all of you for being such amazing class and asking great questions and following along and doing all the things and cooking and really being geniuses. We have a survey. It's the last survey, and we'll send it out in the email tomorrow. But this last survey is going to be like really deep questions about the course, like if we should integrate white folks, how we should price the course, all sorts of things. I see you have opinions. But we have budgetary constraints. So listen, give us your feedback in the survey. Please do the survey because your feedback is really going to determine how we develop the course next year or this year. And also, yeah, it's just this feedback is about like the technical aspects of the course. And so we really, and we invite y'all into partnership and all kind of stuff. So you're going to want to take the survey or not. And just so you know, we will have a question if we could use the results from the last survey in promoting the course for next year and things like that. So there's full consent involved. And so, yeah, if you need to go, we love you. Thanks for coming. And if you would like to stay, we'll continue the conversation.
Bye, everybody. I'm having amazing
Bye.
friend time. And so I'm going to go hang out with some amazing friends who I love so much and who allowed me into their home. So I'm going to say peace and I'll see y'all in the next course.
Yay. Thank you, Karina.
Bye. Love you.
Bye, Lisa. All right, y'all. Welcome to Soul Food Genius. Oh, to Karina. Gotcha. Welcome to After Dark, where we continue sort of these rich conversations. And yeah, let's continue about the Black body being pathologized, about the fat body being pathologized. And I want us to introduce sort of a different concept or a different way of understanding fats, and especially fats on the Black body. So who else would like to share since we're talking about it?
I guess I'll just say that it's conflicting. Like, I know I remember being a little girl looking on like a ruler and like seeing like the body, how much you should weigh at a certain height, and like thinking, oh my gosh, like asking my mom, how much does dad weigh, and all of this, and trying to compare. And I think it's like maybe related to BMI and just feeling like the standard on the ruler that I was reading was laughable, like it was ridiculous. And so I kind of started to throw out the idea that, you know, bodies have to be a certain shape and size to be healthy. But the conflicting part is all the messaging that's out there. So as my body changes and shifts, I feel like, okay, am I not healthy enough? Or when I'm working with a trainer or something like that, they're like, yeah, you need to do this to lose fat. And it's like fat kind of becomes the enemy, like of being healthy and well. So it's it's conflicting, you know, because I might look at someone and know in my mind just because you're bigger or smaller doesn't really say much about your health. But then there's all that messaging that has been there my whole life. So I just recognize that.
Mm. It's important to recognize that BMI is racist. Different bodies have different compositions of bones and muscle and fat. And Black bodies are more likely to have heavier musculature, which is not accounted for. And so, for example, white women who weigh as much as I do are very, very large, because they're more likely to have more fat than muscle. Black bodies are many Black bodies, and not all, definitely not all, but they're also more able to put on muscle, right? And so muscle is heavier and denser than fat. And so BMI is it's a racist measure. And what's really great is when I lived in Ghana and I worked in public health, all of the figures for what was healthy were different than the standard figures coming from the UN or compared to the US. Their like version of BMI accounted for their all Black population, right? And it was really interesting to see that all of the figures in public, they were all thick and round. All of the pictures of women were thick and round. And so there was no pathology created between body size and health when I was doing public health in Ghana. And that really helped me to understand that, like, oh, this country is never talking about my body, like, ever. Don't ever let the doctor weigh you. You don't have to get on the scale when you go to a hospital. And that helps to avoid sort of fat bias and different kind of things that they'll tell like fat patients versus non-fat patients. And it'll help prevent some of the mistreatment that fat bodies experience in hospital settings. You do not have to let them weigh you.
Do you know if there is a way that we can get the BMI from other countries that are more conducive to the way that we as Black and brown people here look? I mean, because I've always looked, I'm not quite 5 feet. And what they say I ought to weigh, I didn't weigh that little when I was probably 5 or 6. You always just, and, as a kid, I was a thick child, but I could outrun anybody on the block. I could outpedal anybody on the block on a bicycle, but still, when I went to the doctor, it was, and I was eating healthy. I wasn't a big junk food eater or anything. My mother cooked healthy food.
Yeah, so it's important for all of us to recognize that the demonization of fat bodies perfectly corresponded with the rise of industrial food in this country, right? And so, as the thing that was normal, the idea of commodity capitalism is that there has to be a way to get you to purchase things. There's has to be a way to make you feel like you're not good enough, right? And so as they're producing more and more junk foods, right, that are naturally going to lead to a small increase in the general size of the population, they then demonize that and then own stocks in industries that are liposuction and diet pills and diet books and all of this thing. So the obesity epidemic, quote unquote, has also it has been specifically and politically constructed. And a really great book that I think all Black healthcare practitioners should read is Health at Every Size by Dr. Lindo Bacon. And the Health at Every Size movement really helps us to understand that even sort of the body mass index that qualifies as overweight was actually lowered with no and overnight, basically, people who had a BMI of 35 were categorized as overweight and obese, when a month before that wasn't the case. And the people who were changing the measures of what counts as obese, these were people who also had financial investments and interest in the diet industry and in pharmaceuticals that help weight loss. And so even our framing of what counts as obese is a political construction, right? I think that there is a lot of talk about body, there is a lot of talk about weight, but one of the most important things for me was realizing that, like, Indigenous Black women were also thick. I thought like Black females' thickness was a byproduct of America, but actually it's how our bodies have always been. It's a part of our indigeneity. And seeing sort of depictions of large-bodied Indigenous African women really helped me to understand that our bodies are not a pathology, that in fact, fat in and of itself should be looked at as a embodied form of assets. It's an asset. And some of my favorite healthcare research, older women who are slightly overweight have far better health outcomes on so many markers than women who are slightly underweight. And that's because fat literally is protective in cases of diseases, in cases of needing surgery. Fat people in fat bodies actually have greater resilience against complications associated with diabetes. And so one of the questions that we have to ask ourselves is, what came first? Did the diabetes cause the fat as a way to protect the body? And some of the most radical researchers are proposing this very thing, because the diabetes paradox is that fat diabetics live longer than thin diabetics, right? When we think about why our bodies are producing fat, it's important to understand that our bodies can't be wrong about it. It can't be a mistake, right? And that there has to be a reason. Just like there's a reason why soul food is genius, there's a reason why fat bodies are protecting themselves. One of the most important reasons, of course, and I think we talked about this, but Black bodies are far more exposed to persistent organic pollutants, which are fat soluble, than other bodies, right? And the way that our bodies deal with toxins, especially POPs, is to store them in fatty tissues. So people who are living in the most toxic environments are actually more safe if they can create body fat to store those organic pollutants, right? Yeah, Justin.
I'll add to that, and I remember having this conversation with you, Asia, almost a year ago, and that me figuring out something about hearing you talk about this made me figure out something myself, is that I have a hard time producing fat, right? Me, my father, my grandfather, and what accompanies that is incredibly sensitive digestion. Incredibly sensitive digestion, which means that, if I'm ingesting something toxic, because I don't make fat easily, it's going to go directly into my bloodstream, right? So I have these incredibly fast reactions to things I eat, right? Like, just, I have the most sensitive digestive system. So does my father, so does my grandfather. We all have that sort of in common. And so this ability to having the fat, hearing you say that having the fat as a protective device means that if you don't have it, you have to have some other kind of fail safe, right? Literally, if something does not agree with me, I will literally vomit it up immediately, right? Immediately. It does not have the chance to get into my bloodstream because I don't have that ability to produce the fat to encapsulate whatever toxic thing is, right? So my digestive system is on high alert basically at all times.
Yeah.
Hey, I have a question. And I'm in my car, so it's really dark right now. Um, just a question, or I don't know. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. So when it comes to saturated fat and our grandparents and great grandparents and um dying from heart disease and clogged arteries, do you feel or not feel that that is related to using saturated fats in frying food and the meat? And I just want to get your opinion as to what you think. I mean, I totally like agree. You know, I'm a vegan, eating any
We love
lard, but I do agree that the processed oils and the poly saturated fats and all that are just very unhealthy, and that the saturated fats definitely are healthier, even if it's coming from an animal source. Um, but our ancestors and grandparents and different people in our community have died from eating a lot of saturated fat and frying of meat and all of that. So I just wanted to get y'all's opinion,
Let's
your
talk about it,
perspective.
because this is a valid wound. We see people eating food, and then we see death, and we link the death to the food, right?
Mhm.
And there's real grief in our communities about how many people succumb to metabolic diseases. Diabetes is definitely 100% linked to food, baby. We can't we can't say that it's not. It's sugar, it's sugar, it's sugar. You can heal diabetes by changing the diet, right? But when it comes to the other metabolic disorders, some of the most fascinating research, and I want you to see this research. I want you to read some of the work in the book that I put the link to, Health at Every Size, but more, is that stress is a higher factor in metabolic disease than diet and exercise.
Yes, and let me just say, I understand that. I co-own a holistic medical clinic here in Atlanta. So I believe me,
Yes.
even though we're talking about food right now. So that is the reason why I did not bring up stress. So will definitely let you know that just because you are plant-based, you don't eat meat, et cetera, if you are stressed out, then that trumps everything. And so I do acknowledge the role that stress and emotions play in our health. So I'm not
Yeah.
dismissing that. I'm aware of that. I'm just
For
wanting
me,
to understand. We're talking about fat, so.
when I look at saturated fat and we take a global perspective, right? Other people eating saturated fat, saturated fat is the primary fat that most humans ate, period, forever.
Mhm.
Okay? It cannot be the saturated fat, because if it was, then humans would adapt it to not eating it a long time ago. That link between saturated fat and poor health outcomes is fabricated, and that has been disproven everywhere. Saturated fat is not the cause of poor health outcomes. The weight of racism on the Black body is heavier than the food that we eat. And if that food is not rich in polyphenolic compounds, such as a plant-based diet rich in greens, legumes, right? Vegetables, green, all that stuff, then that diet is not going to help alleviate the pain of the stress as much.
Mhm.
And if someone is put on a diet that they hate, then it's going to accelerate that stress and give them even worse health outcomes. Nobody wants to eat bird food, right? So like, what do, right? We work as hard as we can to improve the quality of the ingredients, but how do we heal the racism that's actually killing Black people? It's the stress, sis. The way that stress impacts the calcification of our veins and arteries, it's the stress that weakens them, right? It's not the saturated fat. It's the conditions that Black people, especially as the laboring class, the slave class of this country, have to face. And the food, especially the processed food, I really think that it's doing us in. I really agree with you full-heartedly that like those Doritos, there's no love in them Doritos, right? There's no love in Lowry's. I know y'all love Lowry's, but it has MSG and all kind of raggedy shit in it, and I'm not messing around with that. Put some love in the food, right? We're eating food that doesn't have love in it, and I think that you're right. I think that that contributes. The best outcome is that Black people have home cooked food, which means that the best outcome is that we're living collectively because we need someone to be participating in those reproductive labors. High quality food takes time, whether it's vegan food or animal food. It
Yes.
all needs to be slow.
Yeah, I agree with you. Can I just say this one quick thing? As I reflect back, my one grandmother lived 6 months from being 100. Another grandmother lived into her 90s, and her children all died before she did. And so when I look at the difference, when I reflect back, I know that it has a lot to do with when my grandmother was younger, and there were no processed foods, right? So I reflect back on that a lot, that my aunts and uncles, they were eating a lot of processed foods where she wasn't. So I just, in one of the things, and I would like to thank you, all you both for providing this for this class, because it definitely has made me rethink a lot, and really I do feel that the issues that we're having in the Black community when it comes to health and when it comes to food is not, like soul food is not the culprit. I grew up eating everything. I'm from the South, chitlins and everything. And, and we never got sick growing up, but we were not eating processed foods either. So it's definitely making me, rethink things. So I definitely want to thank you both for your commitment to this important work. So thank you.
Yes, and thank you for your
You're welcome.
commitment to the health of our people, okay? And we need all the spectrums held down, even that vegan piece, because we need to hold down the frequency of what it's like to eat vegetables a lot, a lot, a lot. And people need that in the cultural mystery to remember that you should have 3 plants on your plate at every meal,
At all times.
at all times, right?
At all
Alexa,
times.
hey, what's up, sis?
Hey, I want to echo that gratitude, and just say thank you all so much for the years of individual and collective study and trial and error and internal struggle that it took to create this course and to package this information and this ancestral wisdom for Black people specifically, because anti-Blackness and fat phobia are keeping us from our medicine, which is in soul food. And so I'm so grateful to you all for helping debunk and really shake up some of that fat phobia, some of that anti-Blackness that is so pervasive amongst Black folks and Black families, because it's contributing to our death. Right. Like, I really think you all are doing some deep ancestral work. It feels like a call, really, for all of us to be returning back to our medicine, returning back to our indigenous cooking traditions and medicinal practices. And so I'm grateful to be here and be learning from you all and everybody else in the course. And it's been great to make my own connections and hear everybody else's connections to what elders have been doing our whole lives. What my grandmother is doing, and really combating that. Well, you need to stop putting that pork in them greens because it's, doing this, it's gonna make your blood pressure go up or whatever. So yeah, I'm really grateful for this space, and like the wisdom that you all are amplifying through it.
Thank you.
I will echo
Thank
that.
you.
I will echo that as well, which is also part of the reason that I'm vocal about. I understand that there is a component that you all have to be, you need to be compensated for all of the work that you're doing. And I also want to say that this has felt like a very safe space for me and all of us to really say how we feel about some stuff that's not right, you know. And I think if there's a way that there can be, they can have a recorded class and we can have a live class. I don't know, but it, you know, because there will be a difference with a mixed group of people, because many of us have been trained to behave a certain way. If there's a mixed group, you relax, you know, you code switch, and it would be different. And I am retired. I don't have a lot of money, but my word for the year is opulence, not abundance, because abundance can be abundance of things that you don't want. Opulent says something else. And that being said, if I can figure out a way, there was a class that was coming up that was going to cost me $600 that I was like, no, because I need to wait and see if this other class, your class, was going to offer something else, because I'm like, I need to be able to have the money for that, even though that other class is interesting. I think this one is more important, you know. I'm I'm learning, I'm sharing with my daughter, I'm sharing with my brothers, I'm sharing with my nieces and nephews, because there are things that we have done, still do around food, but maybe don't know the reason why. And it's nice to know why. And it's nice to know that it's not just some craziness. There is a method to the madness, you know. And I just, we need to have the safe space. We need to have the safe space. And you all also need to have a healthy living as well. And I'm just trusting and believing that there's a way that both can happen. And I'm praying on it. I'm, you know, I am holding y'all in the light, truly, because this is information we need to know. And the whole thing of the communal eating and sharing, my daughter and I were talking about that today. She has given up a job that was not healthy for her, and her wife just turned in her resignation today because it was toxic. And I was like, you know what? Your mental health, your physical health is more important. You there are couches that you can sleep on. You got a village of folks that will feed you, you know. So forget them people. You know, let them slide to their own doom. Don't let them take you with them, you know. So thank you for this, and just thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Can you
Michelle.
hear me?
Yes, Elsie, what's up?
I jump on the love train too. Um, Just wanted to say thank y'all. Today I went to the gym and I was crying about my fat and I didn't even like realize that this class was going to be about fat. So this class has been really healing and just really good for the mental health. We're like constantly battling white supremacy and the way that it has just like embedded itself in every part of our life and the way that we're thinking and feeling about ourselves. And so like just to get this medicine from our ancestors through you all has been just such a wonderful, great gift. It really has changed just the energy of my days and my weeks. So just really appreciative of that and just wanting to send y'all good ashe. And in the least creepiest way, I want to just like follow y'all everywhere and learn from y'all and just be at y'all feet and just take notes all the time. So whatever y'all have coming out in the pipeline, I will be purchasing and supporting and continuing to be learning from you all. So thank you.
Thank you all. I'm gonna give it over to Justin for the last word. The man whose feet I love sitting at. Me and Karina so much.
every time Asia says something like, I knew what you said tonight. Anytime you use like the multiple words in a row, like age, whatever age stands for, I'd be like, how do you know this? That's always my question. Like, how do you know so much? Right? So Asia and I have known each other for a while and have been developing this class. And literally every time we are together teaching, I am learning something new every single time. Right? If I have a nutrition question, I just ask Asia. Like, I know that's who has the answer. So I want to thank all of y'all for being with us. This is a great honor. Like my role is here to uplift Black people. That is my destiny. That's the reason I was put on the earth. That is why I'm here, right? Yeah, sometimes we got to do stuff for whitey people, to palm colored people, to pay the bills. Okay, well, they're not the color of my palms. You can see my palms. My palms are orange. Okay.
Them palm oil. Okay.
My
That's why
palms
they
are
call it
orange.
the palm oil.
Beta carotene.
That's right.
palms.
That's right. My palms are orange. And I was at the doctor, and she was like, "Is that the color they're supposed to be?" I was like, "Yeah, if you're Nigerian, they are." uh, um. Anyway, but I want to. It is a tremendous honor to be able to share this information with y'all, and to be able to hear y'all's stories and hear your knowledges, right, and to hear the knowledge of your grandmothers and your peoples reflected back at me. Right? It is incredibly beautiful. And as one of my mentors saying that we are in the process of remembering, right? Putting back together. This is not anything that we're learning for the first time, strangely enough. We are remembering why we did it in the first place, right? There's a reason for the buttermilk brine and chicken. And I want to give y'all one of my two, if you have to read 2 cookbooks in your whole life, these are the 2 I suggest. Dory Sanders' Country Cooking, right? Who was a family friend of mine. And the other person is Edna Lewis. Read the cookbooks. Don't just cook out of them. Read them. First of all, they're expertly written. But Edna Lewis's Fried Chicken hits every single point that we talked about tonight. Does it take 2 days to make? Yes, it does. Does it hit every point that we touched on tonight? The right oil, the right marinating process, the right spices, all of it. It's all there, and it does. And it is the most incredible fried chicken you will ever eat in your life. Okay, so trust these Black women. Trust the Black women already in your life that you have learned from, because Black women be knowing. First of all, be knowing, right? And trust that even if we don't know the answer, right? Ask the question, why would our ancestors do that? As opposed to dismissing it out of hand, right? Ask the question. Why would they do that? That seems weird, right? Why would you use fatback? Well, turns out good fatback has a huge amount of vitamin D, like crazy amounts, right? Why would they cook in lard? Why would they use these things? Ask ourselves those kinds of questions. And so lean on the wisdom of your ancestors, right? And also ask the questions. Do both, right? Ask the questions. Don't take it as gospel just because they said it or did it. Ask the questions too, right? Um, so I just want to thank all y'all again, very, very deeply, for being in this, for sharing this time with us. It is also healing for me and for us to be able to be in these kinds of spaces with y'all, right? And y'all are gonna figure out some stuff that we don't even know yet, right? As you cook more, as you learn more, as you do more, as you ask your people more, you're gonna learn more things. You're gonna know some recipe that we haven't even heard that you get to share with us that might have been lost. Where's the recipe for peanut soup that somebody from Virginia that we need back in our diet? Right? Where's that recipe for that one wild greens dish that nobody know how to make, but that one woman who lived over there and somebody knows, right? That we need back in our diet. That was the key to our adrenal health, right? That was the key to this particular piece that help with our high blood pressure or whatever the case may be. So keep asking the questions, trust yourselves, trust your community, and continue to ask the questions.
Good night, y'all.
Good night.
y'all so
And
much.
we're gonna have more classes.
We're gonna have more classes.
Also, we need a live demo situation in Durham, Justin.
Okay. All right, you ain't said nothing but a word. You ain't said nothing but a word. You ain't said nothing but a word. You know we got the kitchen here, so we can do it.
Oh yeah.
Yes, Soul Food Genius Retreat Weekend. Okay.
When I tell you y'all won't be able to move because we'll eat so good.
Right. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you. Peace and blessings, everyone.
Bye, y'all.
Thank
And
you so
don't forget to
much.
fill out the survey. I know y'all don't not fill out the survey. I need to hear from you. These are very important questions.
We need the data.
Did you drop the link or is it coming in an email?
It's coming in an email. Coming in the
Okay.
last email, and I'll have the recordings from YouTube. I'll put them all on YouTube so that you can access them more easy. So the last email is gonna be lit. Don't forget to fill out the survey.
Sorry, one more question. Can I use gin instead of vodka for that pie crust?
Yeah, you can use any high proof alcohol. The gin may leave a slight aftertaste because gin is flavored with juniper and lots of other things, but that's okay. It's not going to be a big deal.
Okay, thank you. Bye,
Yep.
y'all.
Bye.
Bye, you all.
Bye,
Appreciate it.
everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Hey.